Morris Kight was born in 1919 in Proctor, Texas, the youngest of 3 kids. His dad died when he was 7, and soon after that, his 2 siblings left home, which meant that Morris and his mom were alone together a lot, and money was tight. But he managed to attend college in Texas and later moved to New Mexico, and like Harry Hay, got married and had 2 daughters. Life is great. Actually, he got divorced 5 years later and moved to Los Angeles in 1958. He moved into a cottage on South Hope Street with a big porch and lots of land. He was quoted in the LA Times as saying, in those days, it wasn't very gay to be gay. It was a blind, he uses a term I love, it was a blind horror.
Okay.
Terrifying. But to try to help, which seems to be his nature, he would pass the word in the city that he hoped to be a service to gays and lesbians on a non-judgmental, non-threatening basis, which sounds like a trap. And people responded to this. At some point, there were hundreds of people coming and going from his house with different problems.
Coming in, coming out. Once you come in, you have to come out.
If you want to leave, you actually have to come out.
That was like the sign, like on the front, like when you're here, you're home. When you come in here, you're coming out.
Bless this mess. Some just wanted to be heard. Others came because someone in the community was in jail or needed to be bailed out. Someone would come in because someone was feeling suicidal. And while some people in the community looked down on drag queens and hustlers and, quote, street people, Kight didn't. He understood that everyone in the LGBTQ fight had to be in it together. He was one of these people that's very naturally community-driven, which is good, which doesn't seem like everybody that we've talked about
the antithesis to Virginia Prince. Why are there so many letters in LGBTQ?
I want to help all the homosexuals in America, so I'm going to start a fraternal order. No!
For a very specific sub-niche.
I want to be inclusive, so I'm going to be exclusive.
That's what it said on Virginia Prince's house. When you're here to be inclusive, you gotta be exclusive. Bless this mess. Live, laugh, love.
Her cross-stitched live, laugh, love thing is like a wall long because it's just a title for the cross-stitch.
Or, colon.
From that point on, he found himself more involved in civil rights protests and organizations. His earliest contribution to the LGBTQ community is a donation to One magazine in 1964 that was founded by Harry Hay and the Mattachine Society.
At risk of falling into a Abbott and Costello routine, is it One magazine, O-N-E, or are you saying they gave it to One magazine?
It's One magazine.
Now, Greg, I promised we would not get into any Abbott and Costello routines. Is the magazine called O-N-E?
O-N-E. He gave it to a magazine.
But who did he give it to first?
He gave it to One magazine and a magazine. I don't understand.
One magazine, another magazine.
He was also against the Vietnam War, and he spent 2 years in his 60s trying to get Dow chemicals from making napalm. Wow. He realized at a huge anti-war rally in San Francisco, he was standing there with 350,000 young people who were fired up, and he had them in front of him. He realized, they don't need me. They're doing fine. Mm-hmm. Not in a negative way, but although I look at the situation negatively in retrospect, because no amount of protesting did a damn thing to stop that insane war. So nobody needed anybody.
Maybe they did need I imagine him standing off to the side, dressed like a square and slowly nodding and then turning and getting into an unmarked SUV.
And he turns around and he goes away like a Jedi, like his clothes are just on the ground.
Yeah, he turns around and Yoda is giving him a thumbs up, a hologram of Hayden Christensen.
I literally don't know what's happening here. What's going on?
And Jar Jar Binks is there.
So he came back to Los Angeles and decided to vote all his activism towards LGBTQ civil rights. No more splitting his time between trying to stop Vietnam, which was pointless.
Which is almost the whole message of coming out is like, don't be two people. Don't divide yourself like that.
That's absolutely correct, yeah. The year was 1969, and Morris was a father figure to the gay community. Later, at the dawn of the 70s, he was almost 50 years old. Like, he was an older man already, but he was still, putting his time in and trying to solve problems and help people. This was a good-natured man. Morris started the Committee for Homosexual Freedom, which became later the Gay Liberation Front of Los Angeles, GLF.
I think that comes up briefly in my next one.
I'm saying better, though. With 2 other chapters in New York and Berkeley. What stood out immediately about the GLF was, unlike the Mattachine Society, there was no internal hierarchy, no fraternal order style of importance. The Gay Liberation Front was more loosely structured, and they were pushing for sexual liberation for all people. So there was not no
exclusivity.
No exclusivity. You just joined and you were in. And you could be a new member or the oldest member, and you put in the same amount of work and fight. For their first meeting of the Gay Liberation Front, 18 people showed up. Their first mission as a group was to have an offensive sign that used an incredibly ugly slur for gay people and told them to stay out. This sign hung in Barney's Beanery in West Hollywood. How the tables have turned.
Yeah, I heard about this sign. But wait a minute. So that's what they were fighting against?
That was their first fight as the Gay Liberation Front.
I thought you were saying they made this sign and it was some sort of reclaiming
We made this sign to show everybody what shouldn't be made, but it turns out we just really like the sign.
We attracted the wrong crowd. I've heard of that sign that was in Barney's Beanery.
Yeah, they held shop-ins, change-ins.
Barney's Beanery, which is the Sunset Boulevard equivalent of Tin Horn Flats.
100% accurate. I always think like Barney's Beanery, where I would get drunk before Flappers. I forgot that it's a whole They would hold different protests until management agreed to take the sign down. From that point on, that sign hung above Morris Knight's in his home above his like a deer head on a wall.
So I wasn't wrong. Yeah, he reclaimed it.
He reclaimed it, and it hung above his bar.
He dipped it in formaldehyde.
I killed that one myself.
I used a 12 gauge of acceptance.
In 1970 and 71, the GLF would organize something special, to me anyways. It actually begins in 1968 on Memorial Day weekend, which is coming up, when a crowd gathered at Griffith Park to hear Mike Hannon.
We're right here.
Right here. Huh. A policeman turned lawyer.
You hear that, Disney?
You hear that? You didn't start Mike Hannon in 1968, and you'll not stop me.
I remember him.
I put him down, and I'll put you down.
And that's why Disney is so woke today. It's because we're trying to give him a false sense of security.
So Mike Hannon was a policeman turned lawyer and civil rights activist who spoke to the crowd about the challenges of being gay in a homophobic society. This was referred to in a flyer as Gay Day in the Park. It was held to address a long-standing LAPD policy that effectively banned gay and lesbian people from congregating in public. So Mike Hannon was the first instance of gay activism in Griffith Park. And to remind you, Stonewall happens in 1969, so this small rally in Griffith Park kind of predates that.
Yeah, this is several things in LA that predate that. The Black Cat thing.
Oh, that's right. To further challenge the LAPD's policy, the Gay Liberation Front would hold a series of gay-ins, like sit-ins or change-ins or whatever, 3 of which took place in Griffith Park near the merry-go-round, again, where Disney basically got the seed for Disneyland. The gay-ins were meant to encourage LGBTQ persons to come out of the closet and encourage the public to accept alternative expressions of sexuality and gender. They were like closer to like an event than like a protest. Like there was music and speeches and dancing, kissing demonstration booths, kissing demonstration, kissing booths.
Wait, yeah. So it's not the same booth?
No, it's not the same booth.
I'll demonstrate how to kiss you.
Let me show you right now. And then they had booths that offered legal and social services for people. Free legal services. This was held during the day and had thousands of people show up to be gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, questioning proudly in public. There were 3 of these over a couple of years, and LAPD's officers would come and agitate the crowds, which honestly does not sound like the LAPD or any American police force. I mean, think about it.
I made that joke.
When was the last time you saw cops break up an anti-masking event or a Proud Boys rally? They don't do that kind of stuff. Cops breaking up a rally?
They're on our side.
They certainly wouldn't bring police brutality to a series of marches protesting police brutality. They would never do that, Daniel.
That would just look stupid.
That would look stupid. They would look like a force of thugs. Can you imagine the imagery?
Yeah, could you imagine them being so on the nose? Could you imagine? Like, I don't know, a year ago today, maybe?
Anyways, many in the community saw the gay-ins as a precursor to the Pride Rally, which would officially take place in Los Angeles in June of 1970, the following year.
You talked about, and I'm going to get into a little bit more in my segment. Oh, okay, fine.
So it's only like a slight precursor. Basically, like, it was almost like the energy held over into, like, we're going to close down Santa Monica Boulevard. And by the way, Morris Kight was one of the founders of the Pride Parade, along with Reverend Bob Humphreys and Reverend Troy Perry, along with
Reverend Troy
Street.
Perry. That's a name that I'm about to say in a few minutes. Huh.
A lot or a little?
It's all about him.
Oh,
my whole next thing is about Troy Perry.
Well, your guy knew my guy, and together actually, they set up the Pride Rally.
My guy knew your guy, or whatever's the opposite.
Whatever's the better one, a version of that. Whatever allows me to be superior. In the win.
Whatever makes you lose face to the public.
On the morning of the parade, Morris, this isn't a laughing matter, it's just so ridiculous, it received 8 separate death threats. Hello, LAPD, is that you? In 2 years, Morris helped organize 175 protests and demonstrations. In response, the LAPD raided his house 3 times looking for subversive mailing lists like it's 1930 through 1990. In 1971, Morris and another activist from the GLF started the Gay Community Service Center in an old Victorian home at 1640 Wilshire Boulevard. I think it's around MacArthur Park. And as the paper put it, it quickly became a tourist attraction in a purely 70s way. The first day they opened, a tour bus would stop outside the center and they would say, you don't know what they are into in Los Angeles. They are really degenerate. They're really degraded. They have a gay community center.
Wait a minute. So,
oh my God.
Wait, like anti-gays?
Like just a tourist, like tourists come to Los Angeles to see the sights, and a tourist company made a stop at a gay community center, like sickos.
As if they're stopping at like Peter Falk's house?
Yeah, no, they would make a stop to like sideshow them.
That's
like as soon as they opened. Monsters.
That's weird. I thought you were saying that like gay tourists would come and be like, oh, look at this.
Eventually. Very quickly, eventually the community center was already helping people. Like, people would show up to the door with luggage and no other options, and they would take care of them. The GLF didn't really last much longer. They dissolved in 1972 because of the very thing that separated them from previous activist groups: lack of organizational skills. A lack of organizational structure. Sorry, the structure.
The phrase that I put on my resume. I just heard a little boy, after I say that, go, ew.
You have to write a resume, not me. My dad is Donald Trump.
My dad works over there at Disney. I'm going to be John Lasseter when I grow up.
My dad makes fake blood for the movies, and I'm rich. Tell him how rich I am, Daddy. Say it. Say it in front of all my friends. Tell him how rich I am.
And blood starts coming.
He walks over here, but he like gets gunned down like Sonny from The Godfather. I made these squibs myself. They massacred my props. So the thing that separated GLF was they had no organized structure to be more inclusive. It's basically the same thing that undid them.
How were his communication skills and his willingness to collaborate?
Was he ambitious and creative?
Was he driven? Was he driven, Greg? Was he driven, persistent, or both? We've got resumes on the brain, everybody. Resumes. That's right, anybody who's hiring for better jobs than we have, we've got resumes.
Here's the thing. I don't want another job. I've been thinking about how like a dream job is such a scam, like kidnapping someone. Like, okay, if we can tie you to the furnace and make you do one thing, what do you want to do? Like, I don't want to do anything.
If there's one thing we learned from the pandemic,
I don't want any job. There is no dream job. My dream job is not doing anything.
I want the government to provide a cushy life for me. And I hit it big with GameStop.
But GLF breaking up didn't stop Morris. He would go around consoling people, holding protests still, giving speeches, organizing institutions, fighting homophobia, defending gay rights.
But he has poor organizational skills.
On the resume he lied about, he just got fake it till you make it. The worst phrase in American history, fake it till you make it. In 1988, he would go to hospices and medical centers to visit AIDS victims and console them. He was a good-mannered, good-natured activist. He called people sir or lady, called thugs brigands. Is that how you pronounce it?
I think so.
Brigands.
How old was this guy?
He was born in 1919.
That still feels too young to be calling people brigands. The scallywags keep busting up my organization.
Fiddlesticks. Here's another thing. Morris claims to be the first person in Los Angeles to ever throw a yard sale. I read that and started laughing, wrote it and started laughing, said it out loud and
there
started
were
laughing.
So many different directions I thought that sentence was going to end in, and that was the last one. And there's no way you can prove him wrong on that either.
Did not have to register that in the paper.
Sure, one guy had an estate sale, and there was a garage sale, but this was a yard sale, and you can't take that away from me.
His whole life, he lived very frugally, and a big chunk of his money came from his twice-yearly yard sales, where he sold antiques and collectibles. He's not like me selling VHSs and books I don't want to read.
Antiques and collectibles of Karate Kid 3.
He sold brass, silver, china, silverware, weavings, and the like. He built up a Rolodex of dealers and wrangled in customers like Liberace.
Really?
Yeah. Morris Kight died in 2003 because of several different ailments because he was a very old man. But he left behind a legacy of powerful activism in Los Angeles. His home was at 1822 West 4th Street in LA, 90052 in Koreatown. And it's on the LA Conservancy website. And they are trying to get it registered as a historic cultural monument. That's the least the city can do to honor Morris Kight and the Gay Liberation Front.